Hey, here we go. All relaxed and refreshed off the bye week. Mark, your life is always relaxed and refreshed. Do you do anything different on the bye week than you do on normal weeks other than
I watch
figure?
other football teams. I
Oh,
watch other games.
okay. But you do cover the Packers too and the Eagles.
Yeah,
So,
so they didn't have a bye. Yeah, so their bye
ladies
week.
and gentlemen, nobody's going to be able to break this down like Mark Eckel. He's the premier expert on both of these teams. I want to welcome everybody to the Bird Brains with Ken and Mark. I'm Ken Dunek. He's Mark Eckel, and we do this every week. I want to wish everyone a happy Veterans Day. Thank you to our veterans who provide safety for our country. We are so thankful for you and appreciate you having this day. Let me mention a few sponsors before we jump into our special guest, a guy who I've been watching for many years, and Mark worked with him in the bowels of Veteran Stadium. There's not too many people left that could say that, but we're going to bring Derrick Gunn on here in a second. But let me mention that we do this at Sweet Recording Studios in Mount Laurel. If you have an interest in doing a podcast, contact Joe Gangemi at sweetrecording.com, and he will take care of you. Citywide Mortgage, Chris Wilhelm, 609 234 4304. Chris can handle all of your home mortgage needs. If you need help with finance, contact Chris Wilhelm, 609 234 4304. Tony DiGirolamo of DiGirolamo Financial. Tony doesn't only do financially, does insurance as well. So he's a one-stop shop for all your financial and insurance needs. Contact Tony DiGirolamo at 609 541 7515. And Adjust Your Sleep Mattress Boutique, located in Marlton, New Jersey. Did you know that sleep is essential to your health and your sleep system is the foundation of optimal rest? If you think your sleep game is championship level, think again. At Adjust Your Sleep, we specialize in men's health with precision, pain-free sleep systems to boost your stamina, performance, and recovery, whether you're grinding through the week or gearing up for game day. We've got custom mattresses for every budget. Change your mattress, change your life. Call Kelly at 856-357-3640 and take your sleep to Super Bowl status. And then finally, Mark, we've got our big event of the year for Jersey Man Magazine. It is our unmasking event, and we do it at Ballroom at the Bend from 6 to 10 p.m. on Thursday. We are close to a sellout, 750 people. This will be the biggest event we've ever had, and we're going to raise the most money for charity. A lot of celebrities showing up. I know Dave Spadaro will be there, Harold Carmichael, Gary Cobb, several others. So if you want to take part in this event, and I highly suggest you do because it's a really fun time, go ahead and contact me, Ken at jerseymanmagazine.com, and we will take care of you. So, getting back to that, now let's introduce our special guest. Derrick Gunn has been around for a long time. He was the Eagles locker room reporter for the Eagles pregame and postgame for Comcast for many years. I've always enjoyed he and Mark, the way they were, it was really journalism back then. Right now, I'm not sure what you call this. You can't ask a follow-up question or anything, but you guys were down there digging it out. So, Derrick, welcome to the Bird Brains. We appreciate you being on.
Good to be with you guys today.
Derrick, take me back to those early days of the Eagles pregame and postgame show. We were just talking about, I think the original hosts were, of course, Michael Barkan, Governor Rendell, Ray Didinger, and Von Hebron, right? That was the original crew.
Wow, bring back memories. Wow.
And then you handled all of the pregame and postgame locker room stuff. Tell me a little bit about those days and how that whole thing got started for you.
Well, in terms of me coming here to be a part of it, I was working in Pittsburgh at the time, and my agent said I had 3 job offers in a span of 24 hours. And he said, one of them is this Comcast Sports Network in Philadelphia. And I said, what's that? He said, it's like a regional ESPN. And I said, I don't know if I want to be a part of a startup because a lot of times startups don't make it. He goes, I think this is something you should really look into. So after consulting with my wife several times, we made a couple of trips over here and I decided to be a part of it. And, in the infancy stages, we were working out of trailers in the parking lot of what was Coors State First Arena, which is now Wells Fargo, of course. And we were walking across planks to go into a studio that was still being built when we initially went on the air in September of 1997. And as we sat down, and all of us new faces, some from Philadelphia, many of us from different parts of the country, we were formulating game plans in terms of what we wanted to bring this region that they had never seen before. And they came up with the concept of, well, we'll do a studio show, but we want to have interviews with players outside of the locker room. So the first year, I was an alternate with a couple of other people. I wasn't the regular Eagles reporter, although I had covered the Chargers, the Packers, and the Steelers in my journey in broadcasting. And then after that first year, I get a call into the office, and they said, hey, we want you to be the full-time Eagles reporter. And I said, if I'm going to do this, that means home and away games. And they said, oh, you want to cover away game? I said, we have to do away and home games to get a feel for the organization, to get the organization to trust us, to get the players to trust me. And it took off from there. And it evolved into something that I didn't even imagine. It became more, the post-game interviews outside the locker room became a show within the show itself. Because at that time, they had some real characters on that team, man. They had Bobby Taylor, Troy Vincent, Hollis Thomas. And then, of course, they added a Hugh Doug. And these guys were like class clowns in a lot of ways. And they would take the mic from me and stand there and talk amongst themselves. And I would just stand there and watch the show. And people were like, this is great because they'd never seen this before. And then it evolved into more than just a Q&A session with the Corey Simons and people like that, the Chad Lewises. It became a verbal barb taking shots at each other back and forth. And it also became a wardrobe session in terms of what players were wearing. And people ate this stuff up.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, I'm not tooting my own horn, but, it became like a Pied Piper of the region. And people couldn't wait to see it because you got to see a side of the players. When players are standing in front of a locker and you got 40, 50 people shoving mics in your face, they'll give you the corporate answers, the standard, plus minus answers after a win or loss. But when we got them outside of the locker room individually, they became individuals and characters, and people got to see more of their personalities, and people kept gravitating towards that, and it just blew up until, of course, it dissolved back in 2018 or 19.
Hey, Mark, talk a little bit about sports journalism and covering the Eagles back then, because it's such a different scenario now than it was back then. Reporters, you had access to the players. You could ask follow-up questions in the press conferences. I mean, what a difference, because it seems like every NFL team now wants to control the information that the media gets.
Well,
Why don't you guys talk about
it's
that?
Funny you asked me. I was just talking to another old sports writer, Dave Weinberg, who used to work for Atlantic City. He was down in a golf tournament. He and I went out to lunch one day. We were talking about how we came around at the right time. We couldn't have picked a better time because before us, let's face it, the Eagles, the NFL and the Eagles weren't that big. I mean, when you played, Ken, it wasn't what it was. The media's attention to sports talk. There was no Comcast. There was no WIP. There was no. The papers covered you, but it wasn't. They had one story maybe a day. Now now I myself wrote 2 a day every day. And then game day, I had people helping me. We had 3, 4, and I'm in New Jersey. I'm not even at the Philly paper. So so we came at the right time. And then after we got out, it's not what it was. Like you said, as Derrick says, when you got the players outside the locker room, it was different than. I didn't get into those 40, 50 writers talking to a guy. If everybody was talking to Donovan, I'd go over and talk to an offensive lineman or a linebacker or somebody by myself because I figured I can get those quotes from or I'd get Donovan by myself later. I didn't do that pack stuff. I never did. I hated it because you're not getting anything because, like you said, he's going to say, "Oh, we got to play harder." Okay, sure. But I would get John Runyon by myself, and he would tell me what really happened, or Ike Reese by myself, and he would tell me, well, this is what we didn't do, and this is why we didn't do it. And I enjoyed that. And you also got to know the players. Derrick, you got to be friends with some of the players. I got to be good friends with. I'm still friends with some of the guys that.
Same, a lot of them,
from that group. When I got sick that one year, players were reaching out to me, and so it was, it's just, and now they don't want that. I don't think you ever get a one-on-one now. I think even if you ask for it, you maybe, but I don't think. And I guess COVID kind of changed things because when the teams figured out, hey, we can do it this way,
right?
we can do Zooms and we can do this and that.
Mhm.
Well, let's just keep doing it.
And we can cut off the reporter after he asks a tough question.
And what also happened, they needed us back. When I go way back. My first year was '85. Marion Campbell's last year as head coach. Back then, even through the '80s into the '90s, the team needed exposure and stories about them, good or bad. They just wanted stories, and players wanted stories. Now players put their now with X and Facebook and Instagram and whatever else is out there now. Players do, and now it all started too when the Eagles had their own website. Once they started that, you were competing with the Eagles in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like they're breaking stories on their website, so it's way different, and I guess the teams like it, but I know the writer they can't. Well, you know what it does too. I hate to say it this way. The reporters and I'm not going to name names, but reporters that didn't work as hard, it made it easier for them because they could just sit in the auditorium and have 40 other guys in there, and they get the same quotes everybody else gets.
Right. Now, Derrick, you remain busy. You're doing Gunn on One podcast. You're doing Birds Weekly. What's going on with these new projects that you have, and explain to people, refresh my memory. You were let go during the pandemic, right? When the teams and the coverage wasn't sure what was going to go on. What happened there again?
Well, in the summer of 2020, the NFL sent out an edict because that was the height of COVID. And the NFL sent out an edict that the media will not have access to the players, practice field, locker room for the 2020 season. And unfortunately for me, my contract was coming up in August of that year. And when that edict came out in July, I said, this is not good for me, And I will say this, the company I worked for, Comcast Sportsnet / NBC Sports Philadelphia, when Comcast turned over the reins to NBC Sports, they allowed NBC Sports to control all of our regionals. And in 2016 is when the massive slashings started. And a lot of big names, not just in our office, and I don't want to name names, but a lot of big names in our office, both in front of the camera and behind the scenes, were slowly let go over a 4-year period. And that's all of our regionals. And we were like shocked. And everybody, and I can remember getting out of my car in the parking lot, walking in and seeing people like behind the scenes, writers, techs, standing out in the parking lot crying because they walked in and found out they no longer had a job and things of that nature. And so me and Michael Barkan were the last two originals that were left. And I always said, because of Barkan's versatility and because he did so many shows, it would keep him a lot longer than they keep me, and i.e. he's still there. But what happened to me was my bosses did a Zoom with me because we couldn't have in-person contact. We were doing all of our shows by Zoom.
Yeah.
Quick slants I was doing with Barrett Brooks, the former Eagle. And we were doing them all by Zoom. And they said, Gunner, we have tried every way possible to keep you, but we can't justify your salary based on what the NFL is telling us this year. And I said, you know what? I understood. I didn't want it to happen, obviously, but I understood. And so at that point, my contract was ending and it wasn't renewed. So I had to move on and find other things. And, initially, once it became public knowledge, I'll never forget one of my coworkers, Marshall Harris, said, D-Gun, don't just go on Twitter /X and say goodbye like a lot of people do. Do a video. So I sat out on my patio deck and I did about a 1.5-minute, 2-minute video telling the people of Philadelphia and the region, New Jersey, Delaware, my situation. And hey, you haven't seen the last of me, yada, yada, yada. I never thought that video would blow up the way it did. And the video had 998,000 views in a span of like a month or so. And I'm talking former players. I was close with Brian Dawkins, just player after player, Bobby Taylor. All these players jumped on and made comments. And of course, a lot of my colleagues in the business as well. And then all of a sudden I found out, even during COVID still, I'm working for 97.5 The Fanatic. I get a call, CBS 3, and I started Gunn on One podcast as well. So I kept busy. As of today, I'm not doing the Gunn on One anymore. I do a podcast called Birds Weekly with my man, Ray Dinger, the Hall of Fame writer. And I also do, we do that for the Inside the Birds Network, that's owned by Jeff Mosher and Adam Kaplan. Mm-hmm. And I also do an Verizon Eagles pre and post game show with Seth Joyner and Mark Farzetta, who used to work for both WIP and 97.5. And we do that on the Seth Joyner YouTube channel. He started his own YouTube channel, and every week, in a span of 24 hours, we get anywhere from 25 to 50,000 views, on that show. So I'm still keeping busy, working part-time. Unfortunately, I'm not working full-time. In November of 2023, my wife went down with a stroke, and so I've been a full-time caregiver and working part-time. She's doing better, but still has a ways to go. She gets frustrated. Strongest woman of faith I've ever met. And so, she is taking care of me and our kids her whole life. She's from Southern California, and I'm from Wisconsin, and I've dragged her all over the country. And she's very close. Her family is so large, they can incorporate a small city. That's how large her family is. And she's been such a good troop. And I know there were times during our marriage, and travels, she would get homesick at Christmas. We made new family here with a lot of friends and stuff through our church and things like that.
That's awesome. Great story. Let's talk a little bit about the Eagles game last night. I had a love-hate relationship with this game, Mark. I love that style of football, the running, the grind it out. Green Bay, their defensive line is for real, man. I mean, there were some great contact in that game, but what I didn't like was the sloppiness, the penalties. I don't know if the Eagles had a little bit of rust coming off the bye. I was very, very unimpressed with the Packers. Jordan Love, to me, looked like a fish out of water at times. That fumble or interception or whatever they want to call it on that drive in the first half when you're in field goal range was inexcusable for a veteran quarterback. I thought Matt LaFleur, who's supposed to be this offensive genius, he puts this jumbo package in, and 3 times they line up incorrectly. And one of them cost him a big play. So, the Packers as good as anybody. Tell me what's going on with that team.
That's the worst game I've seen. I've seen every one of Jordan Love's games, and to me that's by far. I mean, he looked like something was wrong.
Looked like a rookie. He looked like
he
had that deer in the headlights look.
And that's not like him. I mean, so somebody said, he's not picking up the blitz. He's not doing this, and that's been his strength. Teams were afraid to blitz him because his numbers against the blitz were among the best in the league. So there was something wrong. I don't know.
He's got the tools. It's obvious.
He's been having a great year until he wasn't real good last week, and then this week he was bad. He made bad decisions. The fumble, like you said, was a bad play. What teams are doing is and the Eagles did it very well last night. They're sitting back with a too high safety look, taking away the big play. And now you could do that more against the Packers. And again, I'm like, injuries happen. But
listen, I know what you're going to say. Losing Tucker Kraft and who can expose the middle of the field, right, that's exactly a big loss. Yeah.
Well, not just Tucker Kraft. He lost his best deep threat in Jaden Reed the first game of the season with a broken collarbone. And then Matthew Golden doesn't play last night, another sub 4.3 speedster, and then Dubs goes down later in the game, and of course you lose the tight end who was having the best year out of any tight end in the National Football League, and you lose him. So now you're handcuffed. But I think, and I've said this many times, I think the biggest detriment to Jordan Love's development has been Matt LaFleur. I think he coaches scared. And when you look at the way he coached that game last night, the continuous dive plays to Josh Jacobs. I mean, Josh Jacobs is an incredible running back, but that was the most pedestrian game I've seen them call. And people in Green Bay are screaming, "Fire Matt LaFleur." His offense is so unimaginative. And I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm a Packer fan, I'm an Eagles fan, and I'm screaming at the TV while I'm getting ready for post-game shows. What are you doing? And that last play in particular where Jacobs fumbles, it's a 4th and 1. I said, he's going to call a dive play. Jacobs, after the game, said, they were calling our play out. And, of course, he fumbled, game over. How do you not do play action, roll out something, dump it off to the tight end? How do you go at the teeth of this Eagles defense, which is our D tackles, on a 4th and 1, and you're trying to get closer to either tie the game and possibly win the game? And, like you said earlier, Ken, LaFleur's supposed to be this offensive genius, and over the last couple of seasons, I haven't seen it because he plays not to lose instead of playing aggressive. I say let Jordan Love play the game. Let him throw downfield more. Run more crossing routes. You're going to play this too high safety stuff. Look at how many good quarterbacks will dink and dunk you to death until you make those safeties come up, and then you take your shot over the top. But not Matt LaFleur. I just don't get it. I don't understand what the heck
I didn't
he's
understand
doing.
his game plan at all last night. I didn't understand it. But I also didn't understand. This is the Eagles podcast. What did both of y'all agree with Sirianni going for it and throwing a pass on the fourth down?
I'll get first of all, Sirianni makes me scratch my head because and listen, the guy is successful. I love him. Okay,
I love his answer to the question.
He does some things that everyone that knows football knows that he's going against the grain. I don't know if it's a macho. Like, for example, at the end of the first half, I thought they should have been more aggressive trying to push the ball down the field, and they kind of let the clock run out. At the end of the game, I didn't have as much problem with the going for it because I know what he's thinking. The field goal's against the wind. He puts them in good field position if they miss. A pooch punt, okay, if it goes in the end zone, you're only gaining 15 yards of field position. I get all that. I get it. But I still think that probably the proper play was to try to pooch it down there and make him go the length of the field. But to your point, Mark and Derrick, he explained it, what his thinking process at the end of the game.
I liked his answer. I did like his answer. I still don't agree with it, but he said we did it against Minnesota and it worked and everybody was high-fiving, and we did it last year against somebody and it worked, and this time it didn't work, so you're all asking me why.
I didn't agree.
I still wouldn't have done
it. I didn't agree with his answer because, that's a 50-50 proposition. And look what happened. You had 2 incomplete passes against a Packers rush that forced you to make decisions a lot quicker than you wanted to. And that Packers rush is pretty good. You had 2 incompletions with stop the clock, and you're giving Green Bay more of an opportunity to get the ball back. You keep that clock running. Even if he pooch punches it, Green Bay has less than 10 seconds to try to do anything. You gave them an opportunity, and sure enough, Green Bay inched his way down the field to the point where, you had McManus try that bogus 64-yard field goal. But I think in a situation like that, that was a hard-fought defensive game, 2 teams knocked down, drag out. And I don't understand, even if Saquon's only getting 2 or 3 yards, keep that clock moving. Give the opposition less time to strike back. It was a nip and tuck game the whole way. And I don't understand why. I think sometimes head coaches and offensive play callers and defensive play callers in some instances get too big for the moment. They get too full of themselves for the moment, because I'm sitting here going, that could have turned out bad for you. Luckily you got the win, but that could have turned out bad for you.
Let's talk about
even if he did punt it into the end zone, Ken, you said so it would have been only 15
Sure.
yards.
Yeah.
But 15 yards at that point of the game is big.
I get it. I'm trying to rationalize his thought process.
No, he wanted to get the first down and end the game.
Right.
But then why go so deep with?
Yeah.
It's fourth and it wasn't 4th and 20, it was 4th and 6.
Yeah.
So throw a little short pass to Bark, like that little screen to Barkley that went for 40. Just get the first down. You don't need to go deep and try to. They know. You didn't need a big play there. You needed a 6-yard. If you wanted to go for it, throw a 6-yard pass, get the first down.
Let's bounce around and talk about some Eagles personnel stuff. How tough is Lane Johnson? It looked like he hyperextended his knee on the replay.
And it's an ankle.
Not to be an ankle. But the way he was limping off the field, my initial thought was, geez, I hope he's not done for the year. This looks very serious.
Yeah.
And he comes back and plays in the 4th quarter. I mean, you just get the Hall of Fame bust ready now, unless they're going to, the suspicion of steroids, which doesn't seem to affect the football Hall of Fame like it does the baseball.
He was only suspended twice, Ken.
That's the only thing that could keep him out. But a really tough guy. How about a Brandon Graham sighting? I saw Brandon at the Otho Davis dinner on Tuesday. I said, listen, I got two things for you, my brother. Stay healthy and win. He goes, believe me, you got your priorities mixed up. I want to win and then I'll stay healthy. Derrick, wasn't it good to see BG out on the field again? He made a play too.
Yeah, you know what? BG was very comfortable in his life after football, doing stuff for the NFL Network and, of course, a local station here called All Philly Sports. And Howie Roseman calls him during training camp, says, we need a DN. And, at that time, he hemmed and hawed about it. He goes, and then he went out and got Zadarius Smith. And after Smith retires, Howie reaches out to him again. And this time he ramps up his workouts. And, it's amazing how sometimes, it's hard to get rid of those competitive juices to see if you still have it at 36, 37 years old. So it was awesome to see him to get back out there and see if he could still do it. But I think his value lies far beyond just on the field. His value in that locker room to young players, being a mentor, an extra teacher. I've always said a lot of times players learn more from other players than they do from coaches and watching film. And his value in that locker room to help these young guys who are pretty talented, like Jalen Hunt and Jahad Campbell, guys like that, is going to be invaluable for this team down the stretch because they still have some monster games coming up. When you look at what they have coming up next, they have Detroit. Then you have to go to Dallas. Say what you want to say about Dallas, but Dallas is a different team playing in their own backyard. And then don't overlook the Bears. The Bears are playing some good football, and you still have to go to Buffalo as well to play. So you got some tough games coming up. So to have him there as another coach on the field, it's tremendous for what this organization is trying to achieve.
And it's not like early in the year, Ken. Remember when I think it was after the first game when Jalen Carter got ejected even before the game started, and we were saying on the Eagles defense, it's a good defense. Don't get me wrong, and they got a lot of good young players. But that's what they are. They're good young. They didn't have that veteran. There really isn't a veteran on that defense that could be the guy that says, "Hey, Jalen, get out of there," because he's not going to listen to Jordan Davis. He's not going to listen to.
Well, the other good thing about BG is he doesn't have to play 30, 40 snaps. If he's in there 10, 15 snaps. That's right. It was good to see Nolan Smith get back. He made a play. He's been out for a while. Eagles need that pass rush. I really want to spend a minute or two talking about the latest acquisition. Jaden Phillips, to me, number 50, he plays with an energy that I love. Now, can you imagine, who do you think has more physical talent, Jalen Carter or Jaden Phillips?
Oh, I'd say Jalen Carter.
Well, of course. Now, can you imagine Jalen Carter playing with the motor that this kid played, Jaden Phillips played with last night? I mean, I know it's a new team. I know the energy is infectious. He's tried to please his bosses, but that was really quite pleasing for me to see.
Well, he's a great player, Phillips. I mean, his problem has been staying on the field. I mean, he had a great rookie year in Miami, and the second year, then I'm not sure what happened first. I know he missed most of 1 year with a torn Achilles, and he came back from that and he tore his ACL. I mean, that's too serious. I mean, he didn't sprain an ankle; he had two serious injuries. So, but if he can stay on the field, he's a Pro Bowl linebacker.
Hey, Derrick, since you were a locker room guy, what do you think's going on with A.J. Brown? I mean, he said some things. His production has dropped off. As a guy who's, been in the trenches with these guys after games, what do you think about some of those comments and what's going on there?
I think it's frustration. When you're used to getting X amount of looks, X amount of balls thrown your way, and then all of a sudden you're like a forgotten entity, it's frustrating. And let's face it, wide receivers can be divas across the board. We've seen historically, wide receivers can be everybody wants the ball. But when you have that much talent, like the Eagles have on that offense with Devontae Smith, who to me has emerged as the number one receiver for this team.
Great.
And then you have Dallas Goedert. And then you have a running back who had 2,000 yards. There's so many balls that can go around. But I understand his frustration. And the organization has talked to him about leaving cryptic messages and stirring up the media and things of that nature. But AJ is going to be AJ. He's going to do what he's want to do. Luckily, he's not a detriment to the locker room. He's not one of those guys who will cause a division within the locker room, i.e. Terrell Owens back in the day when he was with the Eagles in 2004. But I think you got to be just a little bit smarter in terms of what you put out there and when you put out there. I mean, think about it last night. What did he have? 2 catches? I mean, 2 catches for a guy making $100 million contract. And that's not the first time. That's happened several times already this year. Yeah. When you're talking about a guy who's used to catching, 11, 12, 13, 1,400 worth of balls, and, you barely have 500 yards, if that, that's a little demoralizing in a lot of ways. And you fight through it. And it's not a selfish thing, some people on the outside looking in who don't know the situation say, well, he's being selfish and he's causing unnecessary tension in the locker room. I don't view it that way. I just view it as a guy who's extremely frustrated that he's not getting more targets. But then again, defenses are playing him differently as well, and he said after the game last night, Green Bay, basically locked him up, you know, that was part of their game plan going into the game. So what do? You look for other alternatives, which is what the Eagles had to do.
Well, Mark, amazingly, we're out of time already. I told you when you have a good guest, the time goes really quick, and Derrick told a lot of great stories. We appreciate being on. I am a little disappointed you guys didn't notice my uniform. I put on my Eagles uniform.
I didn't
love
want to
it.
say-
I love it.
I was afraid to say
the
anything
Eagles
about that.
sport jacket. Yeah.
Very stylish.
Yeah.
I did have a hard time hearing you over that jacket, though, Ken. It was kind of
Not bad. There's a place at a Vegas showroom for you, Mark, with that kind of comedy. Anyway, Derrick, thanks so much for being our guest. We appreciate it. Mark and I will be back next week with another edition of the Bird Brains. So for Mark Eckel, I'm Ken Dunek. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you next week. Take care.